My name is Lauren. I am 27 years old, and 3 hours ago, I did the most satisfying thing a human being can possibly do. I watched the light leave my father's eyes. No, I didn't kill him. That would be too easy. That would be mercy. What I did was far worse. I took the only thing he ever truly loved. I took his legacy. I sat at the head of the mahogany conference table, the same table where he used to scream at me for interrupting his important business calls when I was a child. I watched his hands shake as he read the document. I watched my brother, Christopher, the golden child, the prodigy, sweat through his cheap suit. They didn't recognize me at first. It had been 5 years of silence, 5 years of hell. But when I signed the bottom line, is he effectively acquiring 100% of their debt and becoming the sole owner of the company they destroyed? They knew. My father looked up, tears in his eyes, and whispered, "Lauren?" I didn't smile. I didn't yell. I just leaned forward and said, "You have 30 days to vacate the premises. Security will escort you out." But to understand why that moment felt better than winning the lottery, you have to understand where I came from. You have to understand the night they threw me away like garbage. Let's rewind 5 years. I was 22. Growing up, my house wasn't a home. It was a shrine to my brother Christopher. He was 2 years older, and in my father's eyes, he was the Messiah. If Christopher got a C in math, it was the teacher's fault. If I got an A, it was expected, or not good enough. My father, Stephen, Yates, was a man obsessed with image. He ran a logistics company that his father had built. He loved to talk about legacy and family values, but those values only applied if you were male and willing to be his puppet. I was neither. I was the mistake, the spare part. I loved coding. I loved building things from nothing. I spent my nights learning Python and blockchain mechanics while Christopher spent his nights partying on Dad's credit card. The breaking point happened on a Tuesday. I'll never forget it. It was raining. Classic pathetic fallacy, right? I had just pitched my startup idea to my father. I didn't want his money. I just wanted his advice. I wanted him to look at me, just once, with the same pride he looked at Christopher. I laid out my business plan on the kitchen island. It was a logistics software aimed at optimizing supply chains using AI. I had built the beta version myself. My father didn't even read it. He picked up the papers, glanced at the title, and laughed. A dry, cruel laugh. He said, and I quote, "Lauren, stop playing pretend. Tech is a man's game. You're not smart enough for this. You're going to marry a nice man from the club, and you're going to be a mother. That is your ceiling. Stop embarrassing this family with your delusions." Christopher was there, of course, leaning against the fridge, smirking. "Give it up, Lori," he said. "You're just not cut out for the real world," I snapped. For the first time in my life, I screamed back. I told him he was a dinosaur. I told him his company was bleeding money because he refused to modernize. I told him Christopher was going to run the business into the ground. That was the wrong thing to say. My father's face turned purple. He pointed to the door. "Get out." "What?" I asked, trembling. "You think you're so smart? You think you can survive without my money? Without my name?" He threw my laptop bag at me. "Get out of my house. You are cut off. You are no longer my daughter. Don't come back until you're ready to beg for forgiveness on your knees." I looked at my mother. She just looked down at her shoes. She never stood up for me, not once. I grabbed my bag. I didn't pack clothes. I didn't take my car keys. The car was in his name anyway. I walked out into the rain with nothing but my laptop, a half-charged phone, and $40 in my pocket. The first 6 months were a blur of humiliation and hunger. I slept in a 24-hour internet cafe for 3 weeks. I washed my hair in the sink of a McDonald's. I ate instant noodles dry because I couldn't afford hot water. Every night I stared at my phone. I waited for a text. "Come home, Lauren. We're sorry. We love you." It never came. Instead, I saw their lives on Instagram, family vacations to the Maldives, Christopher getting a brand new Porsche for joining the board of directors, my mother hosting charity galas. They had erased me. It was like I never existed. That pain, it could have broken me, but instead, it calcified. It turned into fuel. I stopped crying and started coding. I refined my software. I networked like a maniac. I pitched to investors with stains on my shirt but fire in my eyes. I had nothing to lose, and that made me dangerous. 7 months in, I got a bite. A mid-level VC firm in San Francisco saw the potential. They gave me a seed round. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get an apartment and a server. I worked 20 hours a day. I didn't date. I didn't party. I became a machine. My software, NexusFlow, launched a year later. It didn't just work. It revolutionized the industry. It did exactly what I told my father it would do. It cut shipping costs by 30%. By the time I was 25, NexusFlow was acquired by a major tech giant. I didn't sell out completely. I kept equity and a seat on the board. My net worth hit 8 figures overnight. I bought a penthouse in the city. I bought the car I wanted, but I didn't reach out to them. Not yet. I hired a private investigator instead. I needed to know how the golden child was doing. The report on my father's company was tragic. Just as I predicted, Christopher was incompetent. He had tried to expand into markets he didn't understand. He had ignored the digital shift. And worse, he was skimming off the top to fund his gambling addiction. My father's legacy was hemorrhaging cash. They were drowning in debt. Banks were circling like sharks. They were desperate. They needed a miracle. So I gave them one. I didn't walk in the front door. Oh no, I created a shell company. Vantage Capital, generic name, faceless corporate entity. I hired a proxy, a shark of a lawyer named Mr. Sterling, to handle the negotiations. Vantage Capital offered to buy out their toxic debt. We offered them a lifeline, a loan that would save the company from immediate bankruptcy, but with terms so strict, so aggressive, that if they missed a single payment, we would own everything: the company, the warehouse, the house. My father signed it immediately. He was arrogant. He thought he could turn it around. He thought he was smarter than the faceless investors. For 2 years, I owned them, and they didn't even know it. I watched every board meeting via the remote access rights they signed over. I watched my father age 10 years. I watched Christopher sweat as the walls closed in. Last month, they missed the big payment, the balloon payment. Mr. Sterling called me. "They are defaulting, Mrs. Lauren. Do you want to renegotiate? Give them an extension?" I was sitting on my balcony drinking a glass of wine that cost more than my first car. I looked at the city lights. "No," I said, "foreclose. And execute the takeover clause and set up a meeting. I want to deliver the news personally." That brings us back to this morning. I wore a tailored black suit, sharp, expensive. I drove myself to the old office building. It looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was peeling, the sign was faded, the receptionist didn't know who I was. "I'm here for the Vantage Capital meeting," I said. She ushered me into the boardroom. They were already there. My father, Stephen, looked frail. His arrogance was replaced by fear. Christopher looked hungover. My mother was there too, wringing her hands. Mr. Sterling, my lawyer, was at the head of the table. "Where is the representative from Vantage?" my father demanded, trying to sound authoritative but failing. "We need to speak to someone in charge. This is a misunderstanding." "The owner is here," Mr. Sterling said calmly. I opened the door and stepped in. The silence was absolute. It was heavy, suffocating. My mother gasped. "Lauren?" My father squinted, confused. "What are you doing here? We're in the middle of a private business meeting. Get out." Old habits die hard. Even after 5 years, his first instinct was to dismiss me. I didn't say a word. I walked past Christopher, who was staring at me with his mouth open. I walked to the head of the table. Mr. Sterling stood up and offered me his chair. I sat down. I placed my phone on the table. "I'm not going anywhere, Stephen," I said. My voice was steady, ice cold. "I own this room. I own this building. And as of this morning, I own you." What? What is this joke?" Christopher stammered. "It's no joke," I replied. "Vantage Capital is a subsidiary of Nexus Flow, my company." The color drained from my father's face. Your company?" "The one you told me was a delusion," I said. "The one you said I wasn't smart enough to build. It turns out I was smart enough to buy your debt." I slid the folder across the table. "You are in default. The grace period is over. I am exercising my right to seize all assets used as collateral. That includes the business and the house." My father stood up, shaking. "You can't do this. We are family." I laughed. It was the first time I showed emotion. "Family? You kicked me out into the rain with $40. You told me I was dead to you. You don't get to play the family card when the check comes due." Christopher tried to lunge at me. "You bitch, you planned this." Security, my security, stepped in and shoved him back into his chair. "Sit down," I commanded. And he did, like a child. "Here is what is going to happen," I outlined. "Christopher, I've audited the books. I know about the embezzlement. I know about the offshore accounts. You have 2 choices. You sign your resignation today and walk away with nothing, or I hand this file to the FBI. You'll get 5 to 10 years for fraud." Christopher looked at his father, begging for help. But Stephen was broken. "And you, Dad?" I continued. "You're retired, effective immediately. The company is under new management, my management. I'm going to strip it down, sell off the assets, and keep the IP. The brand name, the one you cared about so much, it's gone. I'm dissolving it." "Lauren, please," my mother sobbed. "Where will we go? The house?" The house belongs to the bank now, which means it belongs to me. You have 30 days. I suggest you start packing. I stood up. The meeting was over. Why? My father whispered. He looked so small. Why didn't you just help us? If you had this money, why ruin us? I paused at the door. I looked back at them, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, but only love me when I fit their mold. Because I needed you to know, I said softly. I needed you to know that the failure you threw out is the only reason you're not going to jail. I'm not ruining you, Dad. You ruined yourselves. I'm just closing the account. I walked out of the conference room. I walked past the cubicles where employees were whispering. I walked out into the sunlight. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Christopher. Please. I blocked the number. I got into my car. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I felt light. As the weight of their approval, the weight of needing to prove myself, it was gone. I had won. But more importantly, I was free. They say success is the best revenge. They're wrong. Success is great. But holding the deed to the house of the people who kicked you out, that is justice. If you are listening to this and you are the black sheep, if you are the one they bet against, don't get mad. Don't scream. Get to work. Build your empire in silence. And when the time comes, don't give them a loan. Buy the bank. Thanks for listening.